The garage still smelled like her. 22 months after Eleanor passed, and I still hadn't touched her gardening corner. The clay pots stacked in the same order she left them. The kneeling pad hanging on its hook. I told myself I was saving it for spring, but spring had come and gone twice now, and I knew I was lying to myself. I was 64 years old, retired from 31 years as a civil engineer, and I was standing in my own garage at 9 in the morning talking to a stack of terracotta pots. That's grief for you. The phone rang. I almost didn't answer. Caller ID said it was Mitchell Pruitt, my attorney. Mitchell had handled our estate planning for 15 years. Wills, the trust, the house deed when we refinanced. A good man. Careful. Not the type to call without a reason. Vincent, he said, and something in his voice made me set down the coffee mug I was holding. I need you to come in. Today, if you can. What's this about? He paused, just a half second, but I caught it. Your daughter-in-law came to see me yesterday. She brought something. I think you need to see it before anyone else does. And I mean anyone, Vincent. Don't mention this to Nathan. I stood there in the kitchen for a long moment after we hung up. Don't mention this to Nathan. My own son. I hadn't been told something like that since I was a kid being kept away from grown-up conversations. Nathan was 52. He'd been married to his wife, Renata, for 18 years. They lived 40 minutes away in Chandler, and after Eleanor died, they had started showing up more. At first, I thought it was grief bringing us closer. Then the suggestion started. Maybe the house was too big for one person. Maybe I should think about a retirement community, somewhere with activities, with people my age. Nathan would say it with this practiced gentleness, like he was reading from a script, and Renata would nod along beside him, always agreeable, always just a half step behind whatever he said. I drove to Mitchell's office just before noon. He closed the door, sat across from me, and slid a USB drive across the desk. Eleanor left this with me, he said, in a sealed envelope dated about 3 weeks before she passed. Her instructions were to give it to you if, and only if, Renata or Nathan ever initiated any legal or financial conversation involving your estate, your capacity, or your living arrangements. I stared at the drive. How long have you had this? Since she gave it to me. He folded his hands on the desk. Renata came in yesterday asking questions. Whether I'd noticed any signs of cognitive decline in you. Whether your will was current. She said Nathan was worried about you living alone, and that the family was considering options. He let that sit for a moment. That's when the condition was met. I picked up the drive. It was just a small thing, silver, the kind you'd buy in a 3-pack at Walgreens. Eleanor had written on it in black marker, in her careful handwriting, for Vince. Watch alone. I watched it in Mitchell's conference room. She was sitting in the sunroom. Our sunroom, the one she'd insisted we add when we built the house in 1998, the one with the wicker furniture and the fern she kept alive for 11 years. The light was coming in the way it did on winter afternoons, warm and sideways. She was wearing the blue cardigan I'd given her for her birthday, the one she said made her look like a professor. She looked tired, but she was smiling. "Hi, sweetheart," she said. I had to stop the video. I sat in that conference room for probably 3 minutes before I could press play again. If you're watching this, then something happened that I was afraid might happen. I want you to know I'm not doing this to cause trouble. I'm doing this because I love you and I don't trust what I've seen. And I need you to hear it from me. She shifted in her chair. About 2 months ago, I was resting upstairs and Nathan and Renata didn't realize I could hear them talking in the kitchen. They thought I was asleep. I wasn't. She paused. They were talking about the house. About what it was worth. Nathan said something about having you assessed. Those were his words. Assessed. And Renata said she'd already looked into memory care facilities in the area just to have options. Vince, you were sitting 30 feet away in the backyard trimming the hedges. You were perfectly fine. You are perfectly fine. She looked directly into the camera. But that's not all. I went through some of our bank notifications after that. I found that Renata had called our financial institution twice, asking about adding a family member to an account. They flagged it and sent me a letter because I'm the primary account holder. She wasn't asking for herself. She said she was calling on your behalf. She was not. I stopped the video again. My hands were steady, which surprised me. I expected them to shake. I pressed play. I don't think Nathan is entirely behind this, Eleanor said, and her voice was careful the way it got when she was trying to be fair about something she was angry about. I think he loves you. I think he loves both of us, but I also think he lets Renata lead and doesn't look too closely at where they're going. That's been true their whole marriage. She exhaled. The retirement community she's been mentioning, Renata's parents own a stake in it. I looked it up. It's called Sycamore Ridge. It's not cheap, Vince, and there's a referral structure for family members who bring residents in. I sat back in the chair. I'm not telling you what to do. You never needed me to tell you what to do, but I'm asking you to be careful. Don't let them make you feel old before your time. Don't let them make you feel like a burden. You are 62 years old, and you built our house with your own hands, and you still know more about load-bearing structures than any 25-year-old with a fresh degree. Don't you dare let anyone put you in a box while you're still standing. She smiled again, a real one, the kind that crinkled up near her eyes. And Vince checked the filing cabinet, bottom drawer, green folder. I kept records. Dates, what I overheard, the bank letters, everything's there. She reached forward toward the camera. I love you. I'll see you when I see you. The video ended. I don't know how long I sat there. Mitchell came in at some point and set a glass of water on the table and walked back out without saying a word. That's the thing about a good attorney. They know when to leave a room. When I finally came back out, I told him what was on it. He listened without interrupting. The bank inquiry is documented, he said when I finished. If she represented herself as acting on your behalf without authorization, that's a problem. That's potentially fraud. I don't want to get the law involved. Not yet. He nodded slowly. All right. But whatever you decide, you should update your estate documents. Today, if possible. That's why I'm here. I drove home and went straight to the filing cabinet. Bottom drawer, green folder. Eleanor had been thorough in a way that broke my heart and made me proud at the same time. She dated every entry. She'd kept the bank letters in a paperclip with a sticky note that said, "C, unauthorized call, November 14th. They were printed screenshots from the Sycamore Ridge website, and behind them a printout from the Arizona Secretary of State's business registry showing the ownership structure of the parent company. One of the listed partners, Renata's maiden name, her father's company. I sat at the kitchen table with the folder open in front of me for a long time. I thought about the last 6 months, how Nathan had started calling more often, asking questions that felt casual but weren't. How are you sleeping, Dad? Are you still driving at night? Do you find the house hard to keep up? I'd answered honestly because he was my son, and it didn't occur to me to be guarded. Now I was counting back the questions and hearing them differently. Renata had been softer about it, more practical sounding. She'd sent me links to articles about aging in place versus community living. She'd mentioned Sycamore Ridge twice, both times framing it as a nice place, not a necessity, just a good option to keep in mind. She had done it so smoothly that I hadn't thought twice. Eleanor had. The next 2 weeks, I didn't change anything on the surface. I answered Nathan's calls the same way. I had dinner with them on a Sunday the way we usually did. I watched. I listened differently. At that Sunday dinner, Nathan brought it up again. Dad, Renata, and I were thinking, and just tell us if this is too much to throw at you, but we'd like to take you to look at a place. Just to look, no commitment. There's a community in the East Valley that has a lot of active residents, golf, social events. We just thought it might be good for you to see what's out there. Renata was already nodding. Which community? I asked. Sycamore Ridge, she said. It has an excellent reputation. Do you have any connection to it? I asked. I kept my voice even. Financially, I mean. She blinked. What do you mean? I mean, I know about your father's stake in the parent company and the referral structure for families. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd heard since Eleanor's last night in the hospital. Nathan looked at Renata. Renata looked at the table. Dad, Nathan started. We weren't trying to. I know what you were trying to do, I said. Or at least I know what Renata was trying to do. I'm not sure you know the full picture, and that concerns me almost as much. Renata had gathered herself by then. Vincent, I think you're reading into this. We're worried about you. You live alone. I'm 64, I said. I run 6 miles a week. I consult part-time for a firm downtown. I have a full social calendar. I maintain this house myself, and I have more retirement savings than most people accumulate in 2 lifetimes. I am not a problem that needs solving. We care about you, she said, and she said it the way people say things they've practiced. If you cared about me, you wouldn't have called my bank pretending to act on my behalf. She went very still. Nathan turned to look at her. She stopped. I have the documentation, I said. The bank letter. The dates. Your father's company name on the state registry. All of it. I looked at my son. Nathan, I love you. I have loved you every day of your life. But I need you to understand something. Your mother saw this coming and she made sure I would be protected. I am asking you right now to think very carefully about what you want the next 20 years of our relationship to look like. He didn't say anything for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, quieter. Mom let do something, didn't she? It wasn't a question. She did. He put his face in his hands, not dramatically, just a man sitting at a dinner table realizing several things at once. Renata tried twice more to redirect the conversation, and both times I let her talk without responding. There wasn't much left to say. They left before dessert. I updated my will the following week. Mitchell and I sat down for 2 hours and went through everything. The house would go to a revocable living trust I controlled. A significant portion of the investment accounts would be split between 2 charities Eleanor had cared about, the local food bank and a literacy program she'd volunteered with for years. I set aside a reasonable sum for Nathan, but it was structured as a conditional disbursement tied to my own terms. Renata was not named anywhere in the document. Mitchell asked me if I was certain about the conditional structure for Nathan. I'm not punishing him, I said. I'm protecting both of us. If he makes good choices going forward, nothing changes for him. If he doesn't, then he's made that choice. Mitchell nodded. Eleanor would have drawn it up the same way. I know, I said. That's how I know it's right. In the months after that dinner, Nathan called less. When he did call, the conversations were shorter and more careful, like he was measuring his words. Renata never called at all. That suited me fine. I wasn't angry at Nathan. I was something more complicated than angry. I was sad for him, and I was watching to see who he'd decide to be. About 4 months later, he came over on a Saturday morning. Without Renata. He brought coffee, the kind from the place on Camelback I liked. He sat at the kitchen table where the green folder had once sat, and he looked at his hands for a while before he looked at me. I talked to someone, he said. A therapist. Because I needed to understand how I let things get to where they got. He paused. She used a phrase that I keep thinking about. She called it convenient blindness. I kept not seeing things because seeing them would have required me to do something hard. I waited. I'm sorry, Dad. Not for a script reason. I'm sorry because I should have been paying attention to you instead of listening to someone who was paying attention to your assets. I didn't have a speech ready. I hadn't planned for this conversation. So I just said, I know. We drank our coffee. I showed him what Eleanor had planted in the back corner of the yard that last spring, the rose variety she'd ordered from a nursery in Oregon. They'd come back on their own the second year, and now they bloomed every June without any help from me, which seemed about right. She was always 3 steps ahead, Nathan said. 4, I said. She just only showed you 3. He laughed. Genuinely. The way he used to when he was younger and the world was simpler and his mother was still making Sunday dinners and everything was just what it appeared to be. I thought about Eleanor that evening, sitting out in the backyard after Nathan left. The roses were doing their thing in the corner. The light was going down the way it does in Arizona in late spring. All orange and copper, the kind of sunset she'd always stop to look at, even when we were in the middle of something. I'm not a particularly sentimental man. 31 years in engineering will do that to you. You learn to look at what's in front of you, assess it, and decide. But I've thought a lot about what Eleanor did. She didn't fight the fight she couldn't win. She was dying, and she knew it. and instead of spending her last energy on a confrontation that would have broken Nathan and resolved nothing, she just quietly made sure I'd have everything I needed when the moment came. She trusted me to handle the rest. She was right to. I still haven't moved the gardening corner. I keep thinking I will. Then I think maybe the pots can stay where they are for another season. The kneeling pad on its hook. The clay smell that I'm not sure anymore is really the clay or just memory doing what memory does. Some things you don't need to fix. You just need to know they're there. I keep coming back to the roses in the corner of the yard. Eleanor ordered them from a nursery in Oregon about 3 months before she passed. She never told me she'd done it. She just planted the bulbs, marked the spot with a small stone, and didn't make a fuss about it. They came back the second spring without any help from me. I didn't do anything right. I just didn't pull them up. That's what I think about when I think about how this whole thing unfolded. The outcomes in our lives, the good ones and the painful ones, don't usually arrive out of nowhere. They grow from what was quietly planted a long time before. Renata didn't become who she was the day she called my bank. That took years of small choices. And Eleanor didn't protect me with one dramatic gesture. She built it slowly, carefully. Over months, she knew were her last. The consequences we face tend to match the character we've been building when no one was watching. What struck me most, looking back, was how much I'd missed. I'm not a careless man. I spent 31 years catching structural errors that other people walked past every day. But I had a blind spot when it came to my own family, and I think a lot of people my age do. We want to believe the people we love are who we raised them to be. That's not weakness. But it becomes weakness when we let that desire override what we can plainly see. Eleanor didn't have that problem. She heard one conversation she wasn't supposed to hear, and instead of dismissing it, she paid attention. She looked into it. She kept records. She thought 3 steps ahead while she was dying. That kind of clear-eyed thinking, the willingness to look at what's actually in front of you and not what you wish, was there. That's something I've had to consciously develop in myself since she's been gone. She made it look effortless. It wasn't. And then there's Nathan. I think about him sitting at that kitchen table 4 months after that dinner, holding a coffee cup and trying to find words for something he was ashamed of. He could have defended himself. He could have walked away. Instead, he went and talked to someone and came back willing to be honest. That took something. It would have been easier not to. The willingness to sit with an uncomfortable truth about yourself and not flinch away from it, that's the hardest kind of work there is. And most people never do it. I'm proud of him for doing it. I don't say that lightly. I'm 64 years old. I've been told in 100 small ways over the last 2 years that this is the part of life where things start to wind down. I don't believe that. I think this is the part of life where, if you've been paying attention, you finally know enough to do things right. You know which fights matter. You know what patience actually costs and what it earns. You know that the people trying to manage you are usually afraid of something, and that fear isn't your problem to solve. Eleanor knew all of that before I did. She just trusted that I'd catch up. The roses are coming in again this June. Right on time, no help needed. I think she planned it that way.